June 6, 1944. The Allies launched the largest amphibious attack in history on the beaches of Normandy. To do this, they bring together a fleet never seen before, 3 paratrooper divisions, thousands of planes and more than 150,000 soldiers who will be on the ground before the end of that first day. They will be joined by more than 1 million over the next 3 weeks. In addition, the Allies had a resistance network in France that would carry out all kinds of acts of sabotage on German lines of communication, and even fictitious armies that would confuse German commanders until it was too late. Thus, most of the books and documentaries always focus on highlighting the abysmal forces that the Allies had for this operation. But what about the Germans? What divisions did they have in Normandy at the exact time of the attack? What quality and fighting value did they possess? Were the constructions of the Atlantic Wall finished? Did they have the ability to have repulsed the invasion? Well, that is exactly what we are going to analyze in this program. To do this, let's go with the first question. Did the Germans expect the landing operation to take place on the Normandy beaches? The answer is definitely no. And it is that, to tell the truth, Normandy occupied the position number 4 of the 6 possible areas in which it was feared that the Allies would land. The first 2 places were occupied by the Pas-de-Calais and Norway. The first because it was the sector that offered the greatest advantages for advancing towards Germany, and the second because it was an important strategic region that was relatively easy to assault, and it was also vital for its raw materials. The third sector ran from Brest to the Garonne River, where the main German submarine bases were located, as well as important ports where huge amounts of material could be quickly landed. Normandy was ranked 4th due to its proximity to southern England, although it was almost always discarded because it offered very difficult conditions for a large-scale landing. The absence of important ports, except for Cherbourg, which was well fortified, the strong sea currents in the area, the shallowness of its waters, and the presence of numerous reefs, made the Germans continually discard it. Finally, there are the coasts of Denmark and Holland, as well as the French Mediterranean coast, where the landing was even less likely. However, this entire approach changed during the month of April, and this was the moment in which the Germans began to consider more seriously the possibility that the landing would end up in Normandy. This was because he detected that the Allies were entering scenarios similar to those they would find in Normandy, and because they were aware that the region could be easily isolated if a series of bridges on several rivers that surrounded it were destroyed. This made Rommel increase his visits to the area during the month of April and May, and speed up the construction of defenses in the sector. Even so, it is estimated that when the landing took place, only 45% of the total constructions that had been planned on the Norman coasts were finished. Given this, let us now analyze the state of the military forces that the Germans had in the sector, starting first with the land units of the German army. At the time of the invasion, Rommel had under his command Army Group B, made up of the German 15th and 7th armies. The first of them was deployed between Antwerp and Le Havre, and the second covered the entire Normandy and Brittany area up to the mouth of the Loire. These armies were made up mainly of static divisions of little combat value, which were limited to occupying the front-line defensive positions. To these units was added the West Armored Group, which was made up of about 6 panzer divisions, which would later be joined by many more. The infantry divisions that resisted the invasion were the 716 located on the beaches of Gold, Juno, and Sword, the 352 that covered the Omaha area, and the 709 that was on the eastern coast of the Cotentin Peninsula. To these units was added a German Parachute Regiment that was in the vicinity of Corentin, and the 21st Panzer Division that was near Caen. These first 3 infantry divisions that we have named were not 100% deployed along the coastline, but also had to cover rearguard sectors, thus reducing the level of coastal resistance that they could offer during the first hours of the landing. Specifically, Division 716 was made up of men over 35 years of age, who lacked combat experience, since their only task since it was established in 1941 had been the occupation of France. Although in 1942 it had about 17,000 troops, in June 1944 it had only 8,000. This was due to the fact that part of its members had been sent to the Eastern Front, due to the need to have new soldiers there. Thus, on the day of the Allied attack, it was defending a front of about 42 kilometers, also having 20% of soldiers recruited in Soviet territory. It should also be noted that this type of divisions that begin with the number 700 are totally static units without any kind of offensive capacity, and they lack means of transportation. This is because their function is solely to occupy defensive positions. Thus, and as this unit offered fewer and fewer guarantees, in March 1944 Division 352 was sent to Normandy, which was located in the sector that is currently known as Omaha, between the mouth of the Vire River and Arromanches. With a total of 12,700 men, with just over 7,000 of them combatants, this was the most powerful infantry division Rommel had in the area. It was made up of veteran soldiers from the Eastern Front, who had had to mix with 18-year-old recruits. To this we must add that the geographical characteristics of the Omaha sector offered many defensive advantages. Next, already in the Cotentin Peninsula, the 709 Division was located, which again was a unit without combat experience and with members with an average age of 36 years. Furthermore, 2,000 of its 12,700 soldiers were not German. Many of these foreign troops would end up surrendering without a battle. Along with these divisions that absorbed the first Allied blow during the first hours of the invasion, on the Cotentin Peninsula were the 243rd and 91st Infantry Division, which also had reduced combat value. Finally, we have the 6th Parachute Regiment that was made up of select personnel, and had a total of 11,000 men. This unit had hard combats with the American paratroopers, who were later joined by the American infantry soldiers. Their primary task was to defend Corentin and prevent the Utah and Omaha beachheads from connecting. This unit, together with the 352 Division, were the only formations with an acceptable value to face the Allies, and they demonstrated it in the combats they had. Omaha was the last beach to fall, and the one where the Allied side suffered the most casualties. On the other hand, the Americans could not connect their beachheads in Corentin until June 12. Taking into account that the German plan consisted of repelling the invasion during the first 48 hours, they fulfilled their mission quite well. Next, let's now move on to the controversial issue of Panzer Divisions. As you know, the location of the Panzer Divisions was the cause of great disputes between Rommel and Rundstedt, because the former wanted them to be close to the beaches, and the latter wanted them to wait in the rear. The decision that the German leader finally adopted was to try to please both parties, and he handed over the command of 3 divisions to Rommel, and put 4 in reserve in the rear. This decision was not very good because by dividing his forces, he was not able to concentrate the panzers neither in the immediate defense of Normandy, nor in the subsequent counterattack. Thus, only the 21st Panzer Division was in a position to attack on the June 6th, also being one of the weakest divisions that Germany had in France. As is evident, and despite his determination, she could do nothing on her own to contain the invasion. Let us remember that the German defense in Normandy consisted of a very shallow coastal defensive line, defended mostly by static units, which once overcome by the Allies, could do nothing to prevent them from advancing and consolidating their territory. Thus, if they were not able to stop them on the beaches, or organize a powerful immediate counterattack, the Allied invasion would succeed. Finally, let's look at the naval and air forces available to the Germans in the area. Regarding the Kriegsmarine, we have to indicate that it had only 115 smaller vessels with very little capacity for combat, much less to face the Allied battleships or destroyers. On the other hand, during those days it had been put out of alert because the forecasts were for bad weather in the English Channel. For its part, the Luftwaffe had only 168 combat aircraft in the vicinity of Normandy, 50% of them being in a state of repair, so they could not intervene during the first days of the battle. In addition, its pilots had barely 60 flight hours due to a shortage of fuel to train them. In short, we can see that despite the enormous efforts to reinforce the entire French Atlantic coast, the Germans did not have enough troops to have repulsed this amphibious attack in Normandy. In any case, and as always, this program has been a small brushstroke on the situation prior to the battle. And well, here is this program. Thank you all for being part of this community, and especially the sponsors who make this possible. Subscribe and share this program if you liked it, and we'll see each other here as always, next Thursday and Sunday. See you soon.